have learned entire life until the last year when I was in customers. But I worked with Camden County Library District for 17 years. I started out as a volunteer there when my children started school. So when my son went into preschool, I didn't know what I was going to do with my day. He went for half a day without a kindergarten for all day. What do you do to stay home? He said, travel back and forth. It can get expensive. So I decided that I would go to the library and volunteer my account. I started out as a volunteer who sat there and watched books. And what that is just running off all of the things on you watch off the covers of the books. And it worked into different things. I started working with the children's coordinator and putting out facts and putting story times together. That kind of where it fell into place. When they finally hired me as a part-time employee, because another employee was going on medical leave, I kind of stepped into that role of working with front desk, working with the children's area, and then went into the children's coordinator position when that coordinator went in as a branch manager. So story times are always something that libraries try to provide to communities because it is a beneficial service. Most people, parents might see it as entertainment, but it goes beyond entertainment because parents are a child's first educator and they need skills to be that educator. And that's kind of where libraries fill that gap because they're not ready for school yet. But here they are in a place that teaches them how to enjoy and learn to love reading. So librarians kind of fill that role of a early educator. And so when we do story times, we put them together. Our goal is to create a story time that allows parents to pick up these skills, take them home, and incorporate them as they're out and about, or even just at home. So for like our baby story time, that's for birth to age 2. They don't have an attention span. They're not going to sit there and listen. So what our goal is there is we introduce songs and rhymes that are familiar to parents that they might remember from when they were a kid, or they might have heard, and then incorporate little movements that kind of bring it going. So they do laps, so they do baby bounces and things like that. Typically what happens is we incorporate board books in that as well, because those are easy enough that kids cannot turn the pages. Even if they gum them, that's what they're there for. They're learning how to enjoy those books, even if they are going them. So it kind of is the first step. So the parents can sit there as long as they will pay attention. They can turn the pages of the book. It starts teaching that we read about how to turn the page. You can introduce certain concepts. You can point to colors. You could point to different things in the book, like if this is a dog, this is a cat. So those are kind of just some things with baby story times that we try to incorporate. Then when you get into the preschool story time, which will be ages 3 to 6, which will be what you guys are using at, they have a bigger attention span, more longer attention span. They're able to sit there a little better to learn these skills. So what happens is there are 5 skills or things that we try to incorporate for story times: read, write, play. I heard it come because again, sing and talk. So read is an obvious one. Singing, that kind of helps with that phonological awareness. And how to teach is how to say words, how to rhyme. Reading brings in that French awareness. So those are some of the skills that they need to build before they can even go into school. Because at that point, if they don't even know that as a preschool, sometimes they're already falling behind. Because these are things that should be taught before going to school. So like even buying motor skills, so just manipulating fingers, and making pinching motions, those are all developing those skills that teach them how to turn the page, things like that. Counting, we use word story like with stories. Like the by green speckled frog sitting on a speckled log eating the most delicious bugs. You do the whole thing, you count the frogs, you count the flies, and each frog eats a fly, you eat the fly, the frog, and then you do another counting. So it's teaching them how to count. So it brings in those math skills, you're taking one away, so you're teaching subtraction. And then as you add them back on the board after you're done, you're teaching them addition. So these are kind of things that you really don't think about are happening in story times. And so when I was doing story times, I actually noticed it. You kind of try to, as a librarian, try to incorporate that in there and don't make it such a hard, fast rule, but things that they can just take home and incorporate in their daily lives, whether it's singing, rhyming, even just play. Even with babies, when they coo back at them, because that is teaching them how conversation works. So it teaches them that there is a give and take in that balance. So again, story time can be very entertaining. I'm not gonna lie there because we do try to make it as entertaining as possible, but it is also a learning experience for the parents. So last Wednesday of every month, we'll have somebody from the Rotary there to read. Story times are 11 a.m. on Wednesdays at campus. The other part of that, I think we were talking about last for a couple weeks ago, was the summer reading program and why I think it's beneficial as well. With that, there's some facts, I just went ahead and printed them off. The Wisconsin Public or State Library, their job of theirs is that summer reading loss is cumulative. So we were talking about the summer slide and how kids lose those skills during the summer if they don't keep them readily and available. So what ends up happening is that children don't catch up in the fall because other children are moving ahead and have already developed those skills. So then instead of making the whole class relearn, they're just moving ahead. And so these kiddos are losing those skills. If they do have to go to reading remediation, they could take up to 2 or 3 months to build those skills back up, but even then, they're still behind their peers. So what happens is by the time they reach the end of 6th grade, they have lost 2 years behind their classmates. So that's why we try to get as many kiddos, especially ages 6 to 11, to participate in our summer reading program, because these are the most vulnerable ages, and having those skills are very important for them for the rest of their life. Just reading 4 or 5 books over the summer can have a significant impact on middle school readers. Another thing is that some reading programs at public libraries usually encourage readers, especially those who are struggling. So those who are reluctant readers, maybe they're not a strong of a reader, maybe they can't find something that they like at school, because usually at school they are told what to read. Some reading program gives them the opportunity to read what they want. And actually, in 1990, Rubine sent Bishop, she wrote an article, "Reading is fundamental." And the first thing she says in her writing, she says, "Books are sometimes windows, offering views of worlds that may real or imagined, familiar or strange. These windows are also sliding glass doors, and readers only have to walk through an imagination to become part of whatever world has been created or recreated by God. When lighting conditions are just right, however, the window can also be a mirror. Literature transforms human experience and reflects it back to us. And in that reflection, we can see our own lives and experiences as part of that larger human experience. Reading then becomes a means of self-affirmation, and readers often seek their mirrors in books." So that's another thing in Wisconsin, or state library conventions, is that older kids especially, it's perfect to have these in story times as well, is when you read these books with diverse characters, they learn more about people around them, not just themselves, but also other people and children that they may not have those experiences because they don't have that lived experience. So this kind of gives them a window to see in to how others live. But then they also have books that mirror what they are or how they act that also benefits them. So that some researchers feel it is important that students, especially middle and high school kids, read things that are important to them socially. I usually like the movies and books that are popular with their friends, which most libraries do encourage. And that self-selection reading material is an extremely important factor in motivating struggling readers and is a key component of the library. So that is what we kind of try to encourage. Yes, we do offer prizes for them to complete goals during summer reading program, but our goal is just to get them to read. Continue to build those skills, continue to see how the world interacts around them, or maybe they don't have, chance to come to seeing how others live. This is just a way of bringing that to them.
I think this, the whole world is becoming reliant on information, you know, AI and all that stuff. You know, we're failing the human race. You know, our imagination is away.
And I can see that, but there are a lot of things, there are a lot of articles here lately that more people are disconnected from this devices. As far as going back to this parts, I mean, we have people that come into the library and they may have been only e-readers before, but now they're coming in and like, well, I want a physical book, I want to manipulate the pages. Another one is, kind of go back to the writing. There are people who are forming groups. I don't know about around here, but I know, what's that? Work maybe? They're forming groups where they come in and they write actual letters to people, like a pen pal thing. They write actual letters, stamps, envelopes, all of that. And there are more people joining that because they have lost these skills, and it's going to be something that we end up losing if we don't make a conscious effort of employing it.
That it's filling a need, because I know I wrote a family of readers that time. See, is that kind of falling away from the individual families where that focus on daily reading or familial reading is a great part of that family's daily process?
We do have some families that we see every week, and they're there every week. And then in the summer, we see some kids that are only there during the summer. And then we see some that are never there during the summer. They come over after school. Are they reading? Likely not, but they're there in the library to have the opportunity to pick up a book if they want. But then during the summer, because they're not walking over to school, we don't see them. So it varies. It just all depends on the family, what's going on. It all is very, like, you know, that if you're a dedicated library user and you're bringing your children in, you'll bring them back regardless of what we're doing at the library.
So I started with Ethan.
Yes.
I was still pregnant with them.
Yes.
And Ethan, I do to this day, will beg to go to the Camden Library. Osage Beach Library is okay if I can't get all the way to the Camden Library, but every single Saturday, are we going to the Camden Library? Are we going to Australia? And I mean, I have so many stories and so many memories of being a young mother with the library, the summer program, and I mean, both boys are excited for the summer reading program, and they just track how much they read, and like you said, you know, they get to read what they want during the summer. During the school year, AR program is great, and your child belong in meeting.
It does.
But depending on your school district and what level the child's at, the book selection can be really slim.
Or stifling.
Yes, and so that's during summer, that's one thing they get so excited about because they can pick any book they want in the library. And so I have another, I had sauce.
We'll turn off the recorder.
You know, I said reelected readers. Again, those readers.